Yes, did yours?
Yeah.
She loved it. Yeah, it was good.
I didn't realize your daughter was going until.
Yeah, I didn't know that either till she got home and
Yeah.
said that she
Mackenzie was on it too?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, I asked her, I'm like, do you know if anybody close by is going? And she's like, I don't think so, I don't know. And then when she got home, she was like, oh, she was there.
Yeah, she had a good time. I heard some of the recording. Somebody recorded it. It was beautiful.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she had some of the in some of the wherever they sang them, and it was cool. I only heard choir, I guess. I didn't hear band.
Oh, yeah, that
I'm
makes
sure it was
sense.
lovely.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was lovely.
Hi, Jamie.
How we doing, fellas?
Good, how are you?
Yeah. Hi, how are you?
Good, you?
Stan?
Hey,
Jamie. It's different.
give me a minute having.
Can always that change the support was wonderful.
Boy, it's 5:30 already.
Not that day. No, I mean, it's all been finished.
Want me to sit over here or not?
I don't know. I understand it a
Doesn't
little
matter
bit.
here.
But it's cool.
You're good with running it there?
Okay.
This won't be right next to you, but that's fine.
I don't think it matters.
All right, Jennifer, can you hear me now?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Okay.
AT&T commercial there.
Yeah. Can you hear me
Can you hear me
now?
now?
Can you hear?
What's up? Remember that one? It's a classic.
We'll have to, when we start here, Greg, I'll pull it up, but we have to do the public hearing first. I don't know that anyone's going to be here, but I can always be surprised.
I don't have a senior.
Is it started?
It started now, yeah.
I don't have a senior coming to do recognition of excellence.
You didn't have any
seniors are out.
jump out of their seat to come back after commencement? And you said it's on, right?
Yes, it's just to have a little REC box.
Yep, because last time I started, I saw it on and I set it down and then I never recorded it. I'm like,
Yeah.
until like partway
Thank
into the
goodness
meeting.
for the live stream thing.
Yeah, I think I did it about halfway in the meeting when I realized I didn't hit record. So, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I appreciate you guys doing that one. We have conflicts.
It is 5:31 now, so we'll start with that public hearing. Greg?
Okay.
Do you want to print a copy of the agenda?
Okay.
And we have Jennifer on virtually, hybrid.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Do we need to approve the agenda on this? Nope. Call a public hearing for the fiscal year 25 amended budget.
Is anyone here to comment on the amended budget? Okay. What is presented, two things on there. We are amending the budget, trying to do that so that we don't have to have an audit later, or a audit comment, excuse me, later. We're guessing we could end up high a little bit on instruction, which is primarily the teaching salaries. And the main reason for that is when, you got to remember, when you set the budget, next year's budget we already did 2 months ago and approved it last month here. When we set it originally a year ago, the legislation hadn't come through with the increases to teacher minimum pay and TSS. So obviously didn't budget for that. And so we'll think we'll be okay, but we're trying to be safe with that. And then the other item that's going up is, just be on the safe side with the timing of construction. The amount that we added to the budget would be roughly the amount of the construction project. Not all of those bills will be before June 30, but in case they are, then we are within our budget to do so. So that's the two reasons.
Okay. Seeing no other comments?
Can adjourn.
Yep, we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
So, to adjourn, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same
Aye.
sign. Motion passes. We are adjourned.
All right, we're in the regular board meeting. We can begin when you're ready, Greg.
Okay, call the regular meeting of the Board of Directors for the May 19th. And we'll approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same
Aye.
sign. Motion passes. 5, school board basics.
Put the students first.
Follow the law. Follow the law in your own policy.
Respect the chain of
Respect,
command.
Go ahead, JD.
respect the chain of command.
Base decisions on shared objective information.
Operate in the public eye.
Okay. And I don't think there's any visitors here, so we can move on. And the consent items were there. I don't know if you got any few new bills.
Just a few. Nothing much.
Okay. Any other questions on any of the other items listed there? Nope. Okay, we'll look for approval of the consent items.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda items.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent items. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion passes. And we'll go on to the administration reports, starting with Principal DeZeo.
Yeah, so a lot of year-end stuff, trying to transition as much as we can and get prepared for number one, our building project for this summer. I know there will be a lot of discussion about that here as we continue to go through. And so just trying to make that as seamless as possible for not only students but also staff, and trying to get everybody as settled as we can. As I mentioned in my report, finished up our end of the year assessments and are continuing to look at that information that it gives us, knowing that it's a kind of a snapshot, a one-day snapshot for those levels, academic levels for where we're at. Things are looking okay. Like I said, we'll continue to really look at those, dig deeper into them. Lots of activities happening again as is wont to happen in the spring. Lots of field trips, zoo trips. Field day was scheduled to be today. We made the decision on Friday to change it, so field day will be on Thursday this week, so we're looking forward to that. And we held preschool graduation last week, Thursday, in the high school auditorium. Seemed like it was very well attended. We had previously done it in Central Park. That kind of started in COVID, and we had done that for the last few years and decided to move it back inside, and feels like that was a good move. So we'll continue to see how that works for us here moving forward. So professional development continues to be focused on mentoring teachers' IT PDP plans, their professional development plans, and whether the goals are met or not, and trying to balance the support and accountability pieces that kind of goes with my role. So, and then, like I said, lots of preparations for our building project this summer and working through some of that. Lots of hiring as well, and trying to find fits for our teams has proven to be a little bit difficult through our processes, but we could keep working on that. So you can see the PD attendance and the staff attendance through last Friday, May 16th. Any questions?
Before we go on, I'll just add, Mr. DeZeo doesn't even know this, but it's either 3 or 4 people I've had even reach out or informally comment that they really liked the graduation in the auditorium. all positive comments.
Good.
And none negative, so, and
This is your first year doing it in the auditorium?
It's my first year doing it in the auditorium. I think they did it inside before COVID, before 2020. I don't know exactly where that was held, but it's the first time since 2020, since that COVID. Well, yeah, since 2019, I guess, really. So, because we didn't have anything then the spring of 2020. We closed down in March, and yeah, so yeah. Worked really well. Worked really, really well. It was cool.
I think
A
it's
cool
in the
setting.
elementary gym.
Yeah, that's when our kids. it
That
was
makes
summer.
sense. Now that you say that, I think that's what I'd heard
My kids
previously.
have both
So
over here and elementary, but that's been quite a lot of years
it's
ago.
been a while ago. Yeah, well, it's 7 years. So yeah, so we've done, like I said, done in Central Park for quite a few years, and that worked well. It served us well, but I think this was a good change. So yeah.
Okay, we'll go on to Mr. Hertz.
A lot of similar statements to Mr. Zayo, just wrapping up end of the year events and things like that. So commencement on Sunday went really well. We had 40 seniors graduate. 39 were at commencement if you were there. We had one graduate who just chose not to participate in commencement, had family out of town and just chose not to. So 40 graduated, 39 at commencement. A lot of things going into preparing for commencement, so definitely feel a weight off my shoulders there. But now kind of that rush to finish the school year, make sure schedules are ready. Caseloads for ESL and IEP students are split up and schedules are pretty much finished. A few tweaks here and there. Master schedule's done for middle school and high school. Julie Schuler and Katie Schroeder have done a great job wrapping up assessments down in the middle school, similar to what Kent mentioned, just the iReady assessment and the FastBridge assessments for reading. So that's done. Awesome. Yep, that's a good feeling. And then just a reminder, early dismissal on Friday, dismiss at 1:30 for the high school and middle school. So yeah, just thankful to staff for a great year, and I think we did a lot of good for our students and proud of that.
So is that 40 graduates, does that include the kids that graduated like at semester time?
It does, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Didn't realize
Yeah.
that class was so small.
Yeah, smaller class, and a few didn't get to graduation. So you have that number in there too, a few that just didn't meet the requirements. So do have one that's gonna come to summer school and hopefully finish the credit they're missing. But yeah, a few just over the years have gone on to other things or chosen not to.
that's been a smaller grade historically. I'm trying to think of the right, coming up, and then the grade below them has been larger.
You know,
I don't know why. Difference in the water 18 years ago, I don't know.
right.
The juniors have been bigger than the seniors.
We'll kind of have that again. The fourth grade very large, the current fifth grade a little bit smaller. So, yeah, just that we'll see that again in 6 years, 8 years, something.
Possibility, yeah.
You know. PD, same meeting with students, staff to go over individual professional development plans and just kind of signing off on those and getting that documented that we completed those, and then end of the year, any staff member that was evaluated, we kind of have a final meeting to go over teaching standards, and so I'm working through those right now, probably about half done with that process. So hoping to get the rest wrapped up this week. That's part of our checkout process for staff. One thing I wanted to bring your attention to, Success going into this school year made quite a few changes, and then based off of feedback this year from staff, community, and students, making some additional changes. So we're going to move it back to the end of the day. I think that's something I've shared previously. So we moved it this year to balance out lunch. Half the kids were at lunch, half the kids were at Success, and then we swapped. Found a way within the schedule, middle school and high school, to not need Success in the middle of the day to balance lunch. So we've got a solution there that we really like, and that allows us to move Success back to the end of the day. A lot of the feedback we got, especially from athletes and kids involved in activities, they're missing a good chunk of that last class period. By moving success to the end of the day, now they're missing mostly success, not their chemistry or math class. So that was one of the big reasons we moved it. Also, we won't have success on Wednesdays. That allows us to make regular class a few minutes longer. Each period will be a couple minutes longer. So that was more feedback we got, that Wednesday classes with our change from a 2:30 dismissal to a 2 o'clock dismissal, just staff not loving how short those are. So we gave them a few minutes back with that change. And we'll spread out our future ready curriculum a little bit more. We really concentrated it this year and took on a lot. And then just based on our feedback from the DCAP, we feel like we can spread that out and be a little more targeted at each grade level. Instead of having every kid complete, every assessment and every activity, we'll spread it out so it's maybe not as much for students and for staff to manage. So, yeah. And then DCAP, had to apologize to Sandra day after the article ran, am I right? Day after, we heard from the Department of Ed that they had gone through and re-graded our DCAP scores, not just for us, but for everybody that submitted one. So originally we were at a 30, and that was the score that I shared with Sandra and was in the paper. And then, got an email, was that Thursday last week?
I'm trying to think, because I was thinking that was maybe last Monday or something then.
Right.
Yeah.
So got an update that the Department of Ed decided to go through and hand check all of the DCAP plans that were submitted. Initially they had told us they weren't doing that, and that's why we started the peer review process. And they were going to only check a few. They ended up, I think, in their process finding out that they maybe didn't agree with how they were scored. So they went and checked everybody's, and so our score did adjust. Still really happy with where we're at. So just a reminder, we were at a 13 last year out of 36. They have us now at a 24 out of 36, which is where I felt like we would land in that mid-20 mark. So that does align with how I graded our rubric. So yeah, the peers that graded ours and gave us a 30 were being pretty generous maybe, but still happy with that score. So sorry if there's got to be a correction published, right, with that. But
with this probably.
yeah, yep. So, but still really happy with the progress we made in the DCAP, and yeah, grateful for staff's work on that. So, and my attendance and professional development attendance is at the bottom.
With success being at the end of the day, will students be allowed to leave early if they're all?
Yeah, good question. So we're for sure allowing anybody in CAPS or school to career that's at a placement to stay at their placement during success. So we won't have them come back. Still discussing what we're going to do with seniors, because that does eliminate open campus 8th period, or early dismissal is what we call it. If we have them early dismissal 8th period, but then they have to come back for success, then really nobody's going to want early dismissal 8th period. So still looking at that. We definitely have things within the curriculum that we want seniors doing. So one thing that was suggested in BLT by a couple staff members was maybe only having them report based on like a grade requirement if they're failing classes, and or only reporting on the days that there's like specific curriculum to go through. So yeah, still in the planning process for that, what it's going to look like.
Yep, I think I've heard a lot of good, or comments I've heard on moving the success have been all positive. So, any questions for Mr. Hertz? How does the, or either one, you can answer the PD, how did that go through with teachers? Pretty good, or?
Yeah, I think so. Gave quite a few options for the individual professional plans, could be curriculum-based or MTSS-based, so they could focus on grouping strategies or assessments. So a few options to focus their efforts on, and we'll continue that next year and maybe open it up a little bit more is kind of what we've talked about. So.
Yeah, the feedback that I've heard is that they like the individual nature of it. They like being able to focus on some of the places where they feel they can make the most growth and set their own goals. And I've even had, just in having preliminary conversations through that process, had a few of them say, you know, I'm going to keep working on this goal for the next year. And that's kind of been our focus as well. So I think that's a positive for us to know that it's having the intended effect and giving them the time and the energy and the resources as much as possible to try and meet those goals.
Okay, thank you both, guys. We'll move to Superintendent.
All right, so for the first goal, talking about strengthening district literacy in math. I know last month we talked about delaying the math cycle or purchasing some of it this year and some of it next year and still continuing our curriculum cycle. So obviously still looking into that, and I'm kind of, with the way some of the legislation and things have changed and that we've looked at things, I'm kind of glad we pumped the brakes in that way. It doesn't mean we couldn't have if we needed to, but I think that was a good choice. I'd say I've been working a lot on the PD, but I've been working some on the PD. These guys and Mrs. Schroeder and Barb Williamson have been working a lot on the PD plans for next year and then kind of coordinating, collaborating, and meeting with that. Maybe not as far on that. It doesn't mean we haven't worked on that, but maybe not as far as we've been in years past, but I think we're in a good spot and we'll have it ready to go. But with some other things that are going on and scheduling and adjusting to staff, sometimes that gets pushed to the back burner and you got to take some time to do some other things. So that's been going well. I'll present tonight the sharing agreement with Central Line and Boyden Hall for the work-based learning coordinator. It's worth 2 FTEs. It's the same person, Jordan Menning, but his position for basically is being eliminated at the AEA, so we wouldn't incorporate the AEA with it. No, Central Line, will house the contract. So for us it looks the same, but just who he's working with changes, if that makes sense. He'll be at Central Line and he's serving in a different role there, and then he's going to be their new AD next year, but also do some curriculum based work there, and then he'll be doing the work-based learning stuff at Boyden Hall and Sibley Cheatham. So like for us it looks the same, you know what I mean, but he's being housed somewhere else contractually. Done a lot of behind the scenes planning for next fall school year for a variety of things, whether that's PD, schedules, staffing, plans for some things to do with our admin team. So that's still ongoing and hopefully finishing up. I've given you verbal updates as we've gone on, or in email updates about the open positions and positions that we filled, and have a few to approve tonight. I just want to thank the principals and the board for helping with Teacher Appreciation Week. I think that was well received overall. I think that was a good team effort. Couldn't have done that on my own, but just between these guys and Julie coming up with some ideas and some themes, and it's great when people have different strengths and things like that, and glamorized how it looked, because I probably wouldn't have done that myself, but it looked great when we sent out the information, so I appreciate that. And just spending a lot of time trying to coordinate with the staff who needs to know about schedules for this summer with the different projects, and coordinating that and getting that out at the teaching staff, and just staying on top of that as well. So doing the best we can with that. Financial stability and viability, continuing like we've talked about with those positions, and absorbing, transferring, and reducing them if necessary. Had a lot of talk about SAVE and PEPL projections, and met with, which we'll talk about later tonight, with the Finance Committee about that and renewing our PEPL. I just put in one word, bonds. That's taken a lot of Kendra and myself's time. Yeah, that's what I'll say with that. And then just with SiteLogic and working on the potential building projects and the background information with that, and different vendors coming in and coordinating that. A lot of legislative advocacy and education in the past month, specifically, not saying for or against, but with the proposed tax overhaul for property tax legislation, and just trying to understand how that affects schools. Ultimately, that didn't get passed through, but I think there's a lot of momentum for that to start up again next fall with the new legislative session next year. And I'm not saying that's good or bad, but that will be a change in terms of trying to understand that. And then we've had a lot of talk with insurance, just in general renewing. And I put this on here, the attachment, because when I created this. I didn't know if the Storm Protection Fund would be established or we'd have something to vote on tonight, and we do. But I'll give you a brief overview. If you remember last year, part of when our insurance renewed, one of the big changes that's happening into the state to the amount of claims is they're no longer going with just your standard, hey, $5,000 or $10,000 deductible, similar to what you would have on your house or your car, right? They're moving because of the increased cost to a percentage deductible, so 1% of your estimated value of your property. So if we have, and we're talking roofing specifically, something come through that we have to have a roofing claim, it could end up being just to pay the deductible $700,000, which we don't just have sitting around in the management. And when we had talked about that last year, do we buy a balloon policy to kind of fund that just in case? And we said no, and I think that was the right just time to do that because of how expensive it was. Well, it's not just Scipio Cheatham that's having this, it's statewide, this discussion. So what the Storm Protection Fund would be, we would be entering into a 2080 agreement with some other schools. I'll explain more about that when we get to that point. But basically we would contribute to that fund, and over time that build up. And what that does is that helps pay down or buy that deductible in the terrible case that you actually have a catastrophe where you got to replace your roof and you don't have $600,000 budgeted in your management fund to pay for that. It goes back to what would be more realistic in the past, where you've paid that $10,000 or $20,000 deductible, and then they can help cover the rest of that if you're a part of that. And so that's why I included this on here, but it actually got farther than I anticipated. I didn't know that we'd have a quote or something to vote in by the end of last week when I was preparing this. So that's kind of an overview of what this is, and you can ask questions on that right now, but we'll also have that as a business item to discuss when we get there tonight. And that's my report.
Okay, any questions for Stan? And we'll move on to board committees.
Policy committee, we've met remotely to go over a few things, and then we're doing the second reading of those policies that we approved last month. So I thank them for their work on that. There's a lot of little nitpicky policies to go through, and some of that initially was guessed on what would maybe pass in legislation has since passed. So I'm thankful the policy committee did that work. Finance committee, we met on May 7th and discussed a variety of topics. Greg and Jamie are on that committee, many of which we're discussing tonight. I don't know if you guys have anything else to add to that or not.
Not right now, no.
Yeah. So thank you guys for that. There were a lot of things to go over, and some of that we'll discuss tonight specifically, so I appreciate their time. And facilities, we did not meet.
Okay. Go on to recognition of excellence.
So as I mentioned, seniors are graduated, so I did not ask them to come in and read, so I'll read on their behalf here. Band would like to recognize Kelly Jacobsma for excellence in building the high school band and moving forward and upward this school year. The band received one of only 5 IHSMA Class 2A Large Ensemble Division I ratings in Sioux City on Saturday, May 10. Mr. Jacobsma has worked hard to provide a stable, positive environment for students to grow, excel, and develop new and varied skills over the school year. He and his students achieved this 1 rating after 2 years of lower 2 ratings. So the 2 previous years we had scored a 2 at that same event. It is a difficult task to receive a 1 rating achievement. Thank you, Mr. Jacobsma, for all of your hard work, diligence, patience, and encouragement to help our students reach a higher level of success. Congratulations to Mr. J and the high school concert band for 24-25. We just received notice of our 8th year in a row receiving the NAMM Foundation 2025 Best Communities in Music Education. Mr. Jacobsma does all of the work to apply for this award each year. He has submitted great applications to have our school recognized each of the last 8 years. Thank you to Mr. Jacobsma for the time and effort required to be able to receive this award and recognize Sibley Ocheyedan nationally. So 8 years in a row we've received that. Vocal, the IHSMA Large Group Festival Achievement. On Saturday, May 11th, our high school choir students participated in the IHSMA Large Group Festival and earned a Division I superior rating, the highest possible rating. All 3 judges awarded Division I rating with scores of 38, 38, and 36. Division I falling between a 36 and 40 rating. This outstanding result reflects the students' hard work, musical growth, and commitment to excellence. Emma Holmbeck was the 2025 Iowa All-State Jazz Choir member, so she's recognized for that. We are proud to share that Emma Holmbeck has been selected for the 2025 Iowa All-State Jazz Choir. Only 20 students statewide were chosen for this prestigious and highly competitive ensemble, which features the top high school vocal jazz singers in Iowa. Emma's selection is especially noteworthy as Sibley Ocheyedan is currently the only Class 2A school represented in this elite group. The other selected students come from either Division 3A and then 7 4A schools. So 7 students from 4A schools were chosen. Our school is also the only one from Northwest Iowa to be represented. Emma will attend the All-State Jazz Choir Festival from Saturday, July 19th through Monday, July 21st, alongside the other students selected. The ensemble will perform as part of the Iowa Choral Directors Association Summer Symposium at Central College in Pella, Iowa. This group is often featured in concerts alongside renowned guest artists. This is a remarkable achievement, and we are incredibly proud of Emma and our high school concert choir students for their excellence, dedication, and musical leadership. And then the last piece here are the generals of the week for April. On April 4th, elementary, Zoe Alsip. Middle school, Kaylin Hieronymus. High school, Andrea Uribe. And staff, Quentin Liam. For April 11th, elementary, Kaylani Adolph. Middle school, William Flores. High school, Lindy Tracy. Staff, Ella Bruxford. And April 25th, I think we took a week off for Easter.
Yep, we didn't have school on the 18th.
So elementary was Maddox Groen. Middle school, Renata Morales. High school, Tate Marco. And staff, Jean Nag.
Okay, good compliments to the band and choir division there, or vocal division for their jobs and also for the April generals. Move on to literacy goals.
So we're not having a presentation with the schedule. One of the staff members that was in is not able to be here this evening, and we usually use Katie or Barb as the backup, and they presented already, and I said we had enough going on tonight that was okay that we didn't have that presentation this month, so we don't have that.
Okay. And now we'll go on to School Board Appreciation Month.
Yeah, so school board is, whether people realize it or not, in Iowa, May is School Board Recognition Month, and different schools take that at different times, so I think the week of a board meeting is an appropriate time for us. So just want to thank you, Vi, for all that you do to serve our student, staff, and the patrons of Sibley Ocheyedan, and I appreciate your willingness to serve. And there's so much that goes into it, as you guys know, that maybe the public doesn't, that goes into the service on a school board meeting, more than just the meeting a month. You don't just show up and that's it. There's phone calls, conversations, and other meetings that we take part of. Your efforts in the committee work, conversations, and communication as members of our community make an incredible difference to the education that we provide for our students, so thank you for all that you do. One of the things that's interesting, or that I found interesting, and we posted on social media today, that was the wrong graphic, I apologize, is that in Iowa, there's a total of 1,845 board seats. And so you can either have, in K-12 districts, you can either have a 5-member or a 7-member board, traditionally, not always, but usually It's your larger urban school districts that are the 7-member boards, but obviously the majority are 5. But I found 52% of board members statewide are in the 0 to 4 years of service. That means in their first term. And then 25% are in years 5 to 8. So roughly 75% of board members are either in their first or second term. And then the third term, it, kind of drops in half again. About 13% of board members statewide are in their third term of service. And then you have 10% of board members statewide that are beyond that 12 years of service. So we have a couple different experience levels within our own board and have some that have served in the past beyond 13. So I just thank our board for their commitment. And yeah, thank you. And a sheet of paper isn't enough, but this is just from IASB and Sibley Cheatham Schools, just a certificate thanking you for your service and all that you guys do. So thank you so much, and I do appreciate your support and the time and dedication you have to our district.
Okay, and now to our 2-minute board policy.
Usually I try and do something new, but I had done this in May last year when I was looking back, and I thought it was kind of interesting. So I thought I'd do this again. But in filling out some of our free and reduced numbers, some of our end of the year reports that we actually do now to affect for next year. So we had to pick a month to report on, and then we do that in May, and then that affects some of our numbers to start out next fall. So here's what we reported on. Elementary, our free and reduced for what we reported on to the state was at 56%, and that would have been 58% a year ago. So you could say down slightly, but basically the same. The middle school was at 51%, and you could say up slightly, but hold and serve a year ago that was at 49%. And then our high school was at 47 compared to a year ago at 48. So you can see the numbers are roughly holding steady district-wide from building to building, and then across the district. I took out the decimal because we do have to go to 2 decimal places when we report it, and so it was slightly different, but all in all, when you round it, we're pretty much at the same spot this year as we were a year ago. And I've said that repeatedly when people ask. We have over 50% of our students here that are on free and reduced lunch. And then one other factor, now that we've settled and working through some things with staff members coming in and leaving, where we're at right now, out of 61 total staff members, and I'm counting with that 2 unfilled positions, which is the elementary sped position and the elementary music position. I'm counting those out of the 61, but they're not included in the total. So you could say out of 59 here, 19 staff members are at that minimum of 50,000. That doesn't mean they're all beginning teachers, but that's where they're at. And then we have 16 staff members at 62,000, which were the new veteran minimum for those that are in their 13th year this year. And we'll have others that achieve that in the coming year. So just kind of pointing that out where we're at, and this isn't necessarily unique for a small school to Sibley Cheatham. That's all over, but you add that up to 29, 35 out of 59 staff members roughly right now that are at one of those 2 minimums. And just, yeah, that's where we're at. That's all I had, unless you had any questions or comments.
On that? Okay, move on to music for the best communities for music education award.
Yeah, and it was in, Casey alluded to it when we read the recognition of excellence, but I just want to make sure that we talked about it. It's for the 8th year in a row, and when they sent us that they actually said that in the email. And this is a copy of part of the email that they sent to Mr. Jacobson and myself here. It says, congratulations, we're pleased to inform you that your dedication to music education has earned you the 2025 Best Communities for Music Education Award from the NAMM Foundation. Your collective efforts, teachers, administrators, parents, students, and community leaders have been instrumental in making music a part of a well-rounded education for every child, and we applaud your community's unwavering commitment to creating an environment where each child can learn and grow with music. I don't have it in front of me and I didn't look, but if I remember, I looked at this with Kelly in Iowa. The next closest, I think someone got to 4 years in a row and had a previous sheet, but a year where they didn't get that. So, and nationwide, there's not a lot that have a streak like that. So that is something to obviously pick up, and we thank the staff for doing that, and something at Sibley Cheatham to be very proud of.
would agree. That's a good accomplishment for the music department.
Absolutely.
And moving on to new business. Consider approval of new contracts.
All right, the following contracts: Doyle Telehusen to be a regular bus driver. He's filled in sub for us in various capacity. And Kelly Doden, who's done that in the past, but it's been more a sub this year, to be route drivers for next year. And then Carolyn Ward to be our new second grade teacher for next fall.
Okay, any questions on those for Stan? I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the new contracts as listed. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes. Consider approval of new supplemental position.
So I presented this initially to the Finance Committee for their approval to present to you as the board, but just establishing an ELL interpreter stipend, and this would obviously be for who we have currently doing this, Senior Victoria. But what's happening more and more is we're getting more families that when they move in, and specifically mid-year as an example, that the parents, family members don't speak English. And so in order to register and enroll them during the school day, we're pulling Senior Victoria out of class, or asking him to come during his prep. Also, and it's a great resource for our community, but many of them are comfortable calling him, and he'll give his cell phone out, but many of them will call him after hours to talk or ask a question, and he gladly takes that. And so that's kind of where this is coming from, is just to kind of compensate for that time that's happening and the extra effort that he's putting into that. Similar to what we did when we created the 504 position a year ago, I think it was at this time.
Any questions on that? Looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the new supplemental position, the ELL interpreter stipend.
Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded to approve the position. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. And motion passes. Consider approval of operational sharing agreements.
I will not reread the whole thing, and I kind of summarized that earlier, but something we've been working on between Central Lyons Superintendent, myself, and Boynton Halls, and that's where we'll be sharing. It'd be the position we did this past year. Jordan Menning would fill that role. With his credentials, he serves as our work-based learning coordinator, because he has the certification to do that. As an example, this year, he's one, if you remember, in the middle of the year, we got awarded that STEM Best grant for just under $40,000. That's one of the things he did the bulk of, not that others didn't work on it, but he did the bulk of the work on that, as an example. So we'd just be continuing that agreement, other than Central Line would now house the contract.
Any questions on the sharing agreement? If not, looking for,
I'll make a motion to approve the work-based learning coordinator position as presented.
Second.
been moved and seconded to approve the operational sharing agreement between Central Lyon and George Little Rock for work-based learning coordinator. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. And motion passes. Consider approval of Osceola County Fair Partnership Agreement.
So Greta Geese is the ISU Extension Regional Director, and I got this from, and so I kind of copied her explanation that she shared with us, and I won't read it in detail. And I'm going to be upfront. I am not by any means an FFA expert or pro, so if I misspeak, please feel free to correct me. But one of the big changes that they need approved is we're unique in the state of Iowa's. We're one of the few counties that has one district housed in the county. Yes, other districts' borders overlap in Osceola, but we're the only one where the school's located within the county. And so there's times where people can live in our county. As an example, you could live in on the edge of Harris or in Little Rock, where you live in our county, but you go to another school district. And this agreement would allow those that live in our county, even if they're in another district, to show for FFA at our county fair. But we have to approve that through the school.
Okay, any questions on the agreement?
I'll make a motion to approve the Osceola County Fair Partnership Agreement.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the Osceola County Fair Partnership Agreement. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Consider approval of registration fees for 25-26.
And I see right away I have a typo, because in the table it should say 25-26, and I did not change that. I don't know how many times I've looked at that and missed it, but I see it right now. That should say 25-26. The title says that. We did not make any changes to that. Those fees are all the same as they were, and there's minimal changes last year, but as they were adjusted to last year. And we left the activity tickets and the family pass the same as well. I think I shared with you guys in a meeting, the War Eagle Conference is looking at making changes to some of their tickets and entry fees, but what they're changing to is what we currently do. So that wouldn't be a change for us, if that makes sense. And it looks like they'll do that. So there's nothing to present on that one if anyone had a question there.
I'll make a motion to approve the registration fees for 25-26 as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the registration fees for 2025-2026. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Consider approval of adult lunch price for 25-26 school year.
Last year, we didn't approve this till June because the USDA was late getting the information out, but we did get it last week. Remember this, we can't set it below that. They tell us what that price is for adult meal prices for school lunches, and the rate for this year is $4.97. We have typically rounded that up to the nearest amount so you don't have to deal with pennies. So we're recommending to charge $5 to avoid using the pennies for cash transactions, which does happen when we have visitors come in from time to time, and the rate for the adult breakfast is $2.15. We approve the meal rate, and I'm putting that in there as an FYI.
Okay. Any questions on that?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2025-2026 adult meal rate to $5.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the adult lunch price for 2025-26 at $5. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Consider approval of student breakfast and lunch prices for next year.
So the proposal here is to raise the student meal price for the high school to $2.80. What is different is the one change that we've adjusted. Basically, K-8 gets served the same meal, and then high school, it's bigger according to USDA guidelines. And so we're making the K-8 price the same, so there's not a big change in the middle school that there is compared to the others, and we're just making that price the same. And then the high school, I think they went up 15 cents if I remember right, and then the breakfast went up that amount. That's the same K-12 district-wide. And then those reduced lunch and reduced breakfast prices, when we say free and reduced, the reduced is those that don't qualify for free but might qualify for reduced rate. We get that from the state as well, and that hasn't changed in several years, and that is served at what the state gives us. And then the extra milk is at 50 cents, and the student's second lunch, if they're buying a whole second lunch, has to be at the full reimbursable rate.
Any questions on the pricing?
I'll make a motion to approve the 25-26 student breakfast and lunch prices as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the student breakfast and lunch prices for 25-26 as listed there. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Consider approval of milk bid.
As you can see, I have the matrix attached, which we had 3 bids for. Prairie Farms is the one that we had currently been using and had the lowest bids based for our needs there, which Carla highlighted and provided. But I did attach that. And so it's recommended to go with Prairie Farms.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2025-2026 milk bid to Prairie Farms.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve Prairie Farms milk bid for 25-26 school year. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Consider approval of pizza bid for next year.
So typically in the past, we've had a milk bid, if you remember, and then a bread bid. And I'm gonna make sure I use the terminology right here. We didn't really have separate bread bids, so then we can go through Martin Brothers because they're considered a prime vendor. Did I say that right? Kendra, right? They're a prime vendor because we didn't have bids, so we can go through, it's not bid out then, we just use them because they're identified as the state. So if you're wondering, or if you have really good memory why we didn't have a bread bid, it's because we didn't have any to approve, so. Typically, that's been done after the milk one, but we just don't have any. So we do have looking to do pizza again or return, I should say. We didn't have it this past year, but after our site visit and made some adjustments, we're able to do that. And so those are listed in the matrix, and it would be with Pizza Ranch on those days that we have that done.
I'll make a motion to approve the Pizza Ranch as the vendor for the pizza for 25-26 school year.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve Pizza Ranch as the vendor for pizza for the 25-26 school year. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. $6,500,000 school infrastructure sales, service, and use tax revenue refunding bonds, Series 2025.
So we have 4 parts to this that Greg just read, and we got it from Matt Gillespie and Legal on what we had to say on these, because if you open them up for the first one, the resolution appointing paying agent, the bond registrar, and the transfer agent, and approving the paying agent, bond registrar, and transfer agent agreement, and authorizing the execution of the same. We can look at that, but if you go through the resolution, that's 10+ pages. We do not have to read that whole one, and so please ask if you have questions on that, and I will address that right now here as we discuss this. But your recommendation would be, if you so choose, to approve the resolution as presented. And all of these, just as an FYI, were provided by Allers and Cooney, who we've talked about this year to handle the legal stuff, so that's where this came from.
Yeah, to do roll call votes.
Thank you for, I forgot about that, yes.
Yes, we do.
We do. And we need to do it by roll call vote. Thank you for saying that. I knew I'd forget that. So any questions that I can answer with it?
It's
Nope.
just all the legal things that we have to do to approve the bonds that
Yep.
we've already done.
Mm-hmm.
There's a motion in there if somebody is ready to read it.
I move that we approved the resolution appointing paying agent, bond registrar, and transfer agent, and the agreements for each, as well as that we authorize execution of those agreements.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the resolution as stated. All those in favor say aye.
Gotta do roll call.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep, you're right.
Jamie,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Jenny,
Yes.
okay.
It passes. Okay, we'll go to the next one, approval of tax exemption cert.
Same thing, legal jargon. This one's 22 pages. We do not have to read the whole thing, but it has to deal with the tax exempt certificate and placed on file for, when appropriate, we get things that are tax exempt since we are a public school. And the motion is listed under the quick summary, and this has to be roll call as well.
No,
This
just the,
one does not?
just the two that are resolutions,
Okay.
so, not this one.
I move that the form of tax exemption certificate be placed on file and approved.
I second.
Why are they labeled on June 3rd, or why is that the date?
It's when we get the funds.
Yep, that's when the sale went through, but then that's when we'll get the proceeds or the funds from the sale is June 3,
Okay.
which is that a Tuesday?
Yep, I think so.
I think, right?
But then they held them in a, held the money in a.
Yeah, we got a small percentage of it
Yep.
called a good faith
Yep,
amount up front, and then they're processing that and they hold an escrow, and then we get that on June 3rd.
okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the tax certs. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Approval of continuing disclosure certificate.
Same thing in legal jargon, but basically disclosing of what we're buying with the bonds, the purpose of it, and the resolution, and legal disclosure is what it's getting at. And what all the terms mean.
Any questions on that, or else I need a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the continuing disclosure certificate as presented.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the continuing disclosure certificate. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
This one, we need roll call for this resolution.
So resolution authorizing the terms of issuance and providing for and securing the payment of school infrastructure sales, service, and use tax revenue refunding bonds.
Yeah, as stated, I don't have anything to add on this one.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution as presented.
Second.
Okay, been moved and seconded, and now we need a roll call vote.
Jamie,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Jenny,
Yes.
okay.
Okay, motion passes. Consider approval of resolution of, to approve participation in Storm Protection Fund.
And before I get going, will this be roll call?
Yeah.
Right? Yep, I was gonna say that ahead of time, okay. So to kind of get back what I had said in my report and to summarize, these bullet points and the agreements came after I put my report on there, and I just left it coming through. So it was set up by Janelle Friedman. We'd enter into a 28E agreement on this, and there'd be other districts around the state. There's 2 tiers in here based on your district size, but I don't remember the cutoff. But regardless, it says there in the second point, we're in the smaller cutoff, so the amount we'd pay per incident would be $10,000. The larger districts, and one of the things I'll share here, they use as an example, they pay $25,000. And so obviously with more students, you're gonna have more building value and coverage, right? And so to be in this agreement, The members have to have property coverage with EMC for wind and hail deductible, which we do. To have broad representation on the board, we divide it into larger and smaller districts. They have 5 board members that are primarily SBOs from the larger districts, and they're working on getting 4 from the smaller districts. I was asked to be on that board, so assuming this goes through right now, I more than likely will be on the board to represent Northwest Iowa and the smaller school districts. You have until June 27 to join, but the earlier that they can get things this year, get things set up, it gives them a better idea of what the cost will be. And then subsequent years, you have until June 1 to sign up. Members can terminate in any year, but there's a bigger entrance cost the first year. So whether we enter this year or 3 years down the road, there's a bigger cost your first year. And so if those want to hold out and say, hey, 3 years from now, we'll have a lower barrier to entry, they would give them the same cost to enter, if that makes sense. The administrator and the fiscal agents are both required to carry insurance or a bond, and that is covered by us. I'm trying to see the applicable ones. If we approve to be on here, your contribution is due into the fund by July 10. And then it says the administrator can approve claims that are less than $1,000 to be reported at the next board meetings. Those that are greater than $100,000 prior to the board meetings as well, and then that'd have to be approved by the board and how they pay that out. So our share for FY26, this coming year, to be entered, and remember this is for the first year of this, and then the idea is if this gets built up, that cost would go down. The years after that would be $23,184. There's our resolution. This was from a presentation, and I did not put the whole presentation on here. It was 30 some slides, but I thought this gave just an overall summary of the benefit. And the 25,000 is for the bigger school district. You could change the math to 10. So that's why it says 25, because SBF 25 is for the large districts, Storm Protection Fund 10 is for the smaller. So let's say you have hail damage at one of your buildings that has $30 million in value, right? 1%, just one of your buildings, which we have here. Your 1% deductible is $300,000 that you have to come up with, and your repairs for the roof are $2 million. Your district SBF coverage means you have to pay $25,000 for a large, in our case, $10,000 per occurrence. So it says district pays 25, we could change that to 10. Okay, we have to come up with the deductible for insurance. So instead of coming up with all 300,000, we come up with the 25 in that case. In our case, it'd be 10. The Storm Protection Fund repays the remaining portion of that deductible. And then the cost to replace the roof, the remaining portion of that is then paid by EMC. So when you have $2 million to replace your whole roof, we come back to paying our deductible. It's not called a deductible, but that's what I'm going to say for right now at $10,000, rather than having to pay 300 grand in this case. That kind of gives a little bit of a math summary there, if that makes sense.
You know how many schools are doing in that, or in the possibly to enroll?
I do.
I think all of them are figured.
Yeah, anyone that's given EMC coverage had that possibility, or were told about this.
The goal
I'm
is
going
to
from
get to
memory.
10
I thought she had 100 that were seriously interested to start. Did that sound, or 97 or something, or 102 to start out, and that had put serious interest in. More might be. Some have already started going the route of building up their management fund by setting aside extra dollars each year to build that up to get to, I'm not suggesting we do this because we're not in that boat, but to get to the 300,000 and then let it set there. That is an option. One of the pieces of legislation that came through this spring that ultimately didn't pass, though if it passed, it would have prevented that, because they wanted people to be accountable for their management fund to the taxpayers, and they're saying some schools were building up too big a balance. Well, the reason they're doing that is schools either A, had some pending litigation that they're preparing for, or they're building that up to try and protect themselves from insurance claims, because those costs have continued to skyrocket, and not everyone sees that. So that option could be limited. I won't get into the specifics of the bill. It didn't pass, but you could only carry, ultimately it was going to come through over a 3-year average. You could only carry 120% of that 3-year average, which would make it, if that passes next year, really hard to build up your management fund balance to have on hand 1% for that. And if you would ever use that, then you would have to start over again. So I'm not saying that's a bad option, but I think when that came through, others were looking for other ways to protect against that risk, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
they were positive on the number of schools that were initially
Sure.
interested, yes.
You got a guesstimate on who's paying, I mean, percentage paying 25 versus 10?
That I don't know. Like I said, there was a cutoff based on student enrollment,
Yeah.
and I don't know that
They
I
didn't really share all of that, who was what, they just shared, you know, our individual, and then the dollar amount, everybody's dollar amount is different, the 10,000 versus 25,000.
I was just trying to see how much money they were going to get.
They're
Did they
hoping
think?
for 10 million
Yeah.
to build
start
to
with.
that, to have a good,
They came up with the estimated number of schools interested and projected, and then the dollar amount they came up with was to set the fund at initially, that if this year we had more than one claim in the first year, they went back historically for how many claims were in any given year in the last, was it 50 years? Do you remember? 40 years?
it was a long time.
And that pot, adjusted for inflation with what we're taking the first year, would cover 49 out of the 50 years. And so they were confident that that could cover in worst case scenarios this first year. And in a case where it's not a worst case scenario, that pot is carried over. They're not going to pay that back. So then ideally when you're in it multiple years moving forward, we would have, that should hopefully drive down our costs. And we would have less to pay to be a part of that. That's the idea behind it.
Is this just with Iowa schools?
Yes, yep. It's, yeah, strictly with Iowa schools. Not that
Schools.
others couldn't, states couldn't do that on their own,
Yeah,
but this would be,
this one is.
this fund would be an agreement for Iowa schools.
Yeah, schools and AEAs, community colleges are not included.
Yes. AAs can, but not community colleges. The risk was too, their structure is different, the risk was too large to be a part of this with community colleges because of the number of square feet they have and how spread out their campuses are.
And their
There's more risk
campuses
there.
are usually all in one place, like school districts have different, in different parts of town, you know, where it's less likely everything would get wiped out in a disaster.
So coincidentally, we didn't know this was going to happen at the beginning of the year. We've had conversations off and on throughout the year about what's a way to protect ourselves against this. We had talked about, do we start in the spring talking to you guys about building up the fund? Look at other options. I mean, I'm not saying we talked about this daily or weekly, but Kendra and I had talked about it a lot after our quotes came back last year. And so when this came through, it was very intriguing. So I think Kendra attended the workshop first, and then I watched the webinar later and started talking through this and thought this could be a good option for our school.
I thought the fee for it is not, I mean, when we were looking last year at the deductible buy down, it was 50,000, you know?
And that was reoccurring. Didn't matter if you paid or not, that was going to be
Yeah, that
happen
was-
every
Bill
year and probably
Pearson
go
had
up.
that one, didn't he?
Yeah.
I
Yes.
couldn't remember if it was 50 or 100. I thought maybe
Yeah.
100.
Because we said if the 1%, I remember the math on that, if we did 1% was 350,000 to replace one of our roofs, that we had to pay that, and that deductible buy down was 50 grand every 7 years. It take us 7 years and we've paid that money.
Yep.
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense.
So yeah, 23 is a chunk of change, but we're hoping it's not that amount every year.
Any roof problems with all the wind? Have you heard?
We have not.
What'd you
As I
say,
said-
Greg?
I was just wondering if anybody has had any wind problems or roof problems with the wind lately.
Today,
Because,
you mean? Or what?
well, because
Or
they
just-
said Inwood didn't have power, the Larchwood didn't have power, Hudson,
Oh.
South Dakota didn't have power. Everybody over there was
today.
Yeah.
I hadn't heard anything today.
But then last week too, the wind was blowing like
Yeah.
crazy. Any other questions for anybody on Kendra or Stan on Storm Protection Fund?
I'll make a motion to approve the participation in the Storm Protection Fund as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the participation in Storm Protection Fund. We'll have a roll call vote.
Jamie,
Yes.
Kristen,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes,
Jenny.
Yes.
and it's approved. I really like the idea that they'll let it go down if it, so, if hopefully the
that'll
fund
happen.
stays up
Yeah.
there
Correct, yeah.
and it doesn't get used up. Okay, go on to
Equipment breakdown
I
insurance.
was gonna say, my computer just froze. Approval of equipment breakdown, insurance renewal.
So we've done this in the past. Why we didn't attach it is because we've been having them adjust the quote several times over for different reasons. We still had some of the new equipment from the kitchen that they had added on there but was still under warranty. And then we asked them to make some changes because we don't need equipment breakdown. One of the big things is for your HVAC. Hopefully in the next year, we're not gonna need that coverage at the elementary because hopefully nothing happens, but if it does, initially it should be under warranty. And so we've had to go back and forth on some rate adjustments. I think Kendra
Handed
put
this
a,
out. It's the latest one that
Yep.
we have, but the laptops and tablets, that needs to be adjusted too. We're getting some new ones. Some of the ones that won't be used and will be used as backups, we won't fix those. You know, if they break, we just won't fix them. So we wouldn't turn them in. So we submitted Friday to get another quote, and I thought maybe we would have one today, but a new one, but we did not. So it should be less than this.
so what we're asking you to approve to renew us, which we've done the last several years, the equipment breakdown insurance, and then when we get the new quote that it's adjusted, that's what we'll go with. But we have to give them an answer coming up here. But it will be adjusted down. It should be less than what is listed on that sheet.
I think you could just approve the renewal, and then
Yep.
this is the most that it would be for next year.
And our current premium is the 99.
Yeah, and the renewal adjustment, that $13,000 increase is because we use it a lot. Which
What's
is
that?
Because we turn a lot of claims in,
Oh.
like you're supposed to, but then premiums are increased.
Yep.
So it would be like an example of a claim that was submitted on the.
Yeah, and we asked for a list of that so that we're seeing that we get our dollars back. So all of our copier work and the toner, when we get that, goes directly through breakdown insurance.
A few years ago, we added our copiers on to that. You can do that instead of, we used to have like a maintenance agreement with the copier company, but it was cheaper to do it this way through here. So rather than having that set agreement with the copier company, all of the toner and repairs goes through equipment breakdown.
So we don't even get the bill for that. It goes to these, Marco sends it to them, and then they pay for that, as an example.
HVAC.
Yeah, if we have different things, certain, not all, but certain components break down HVAC, specifically like control boards and things like that, the replacement cost of them. Different things in the kitchen that we have to have repair work done on when they're not under warranty anymore. obviously what we just talked about, computers and laptops, if they get worked on or need to be repaired, which happens fairly regularly with some of the student computers.
Don't we have something with climate too, some with this insurance and the,
Climate control, so we have an agreement with them. They service the HVAC. They come in and they do all like the filter replacement on all the units, the big, huge rooftop units, and then some of the smaller ones. So they'll come and service that twice a year. I think they do filters, and then we've had a few issues.
Service agreement then.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, which is paid through this.
Okay.
Oh yeah, yes. I forgot about that.
Oh, it's
That
paid
agreement is
through
paid
this?
through this. Yep.
Yeah.
So it's, in my mind, it's not really a repair. I mean, toner is,
Some of that stuff.
you just
yeah.
use it.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. So like the maintenance agreement for the HVAC or service agreement and the toner, those kind of things, we specifically added those to this because it can be paid through management
Then it's
that way.
yep.
So is it, I mean, it must, you're just thinking that it's still the best option to go versus, even though our premiums are going up, it's not going up enough to,
Yeah, I mean, what did he tell us? It was,
Yeah, our usage rate is, he goes, the good thing is, or he said, number one, he congratulated us because our usage rate is about as high as any district, which means we're turning it, not that others don't have those claims, but means we're turning them in. Which on one hand's good, he goes, but on the other hand, then your rate goes up.
Sure.
But we're pretty close to being dollar for dollar coming out ahead there. It was pretty close. We can't tell you for this past year because we have 2 months left with some things, but we were pretty close to being where our premium was at.
yeah, we're
When-
turning it, we're getting that that many claims paid for the premium amount. It's a kind of a wash.
Yeah. We weren't at the 99, but
No.
we still,
not-
when we
not
asked
yet.
for the report, we still had end of April and May and June to go
Sure.
through yet with that, so we'd come through that, and then, yeah, that all goes through management then, because
Yeah,
it's
if
paid
we-
as an insurance.
If we didn't have it through here, those repairs and costs would have to come through general fund.
Did I answer kind of the questions with that?
Yep. Okay, go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve the equipment breakdown insurance renewal as presented.
second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the equipment breakdown insurance renewal for the coming year, fiscal '26. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Consider approval of FY '25 amended budget document and authorization to file with Department of Management.
Yeah, I don't have anything more to add than I did at the hearing at the beginning, other than, yeah, we do this to avoid an audit comment. I think it's better to do it this way to be transparent. We might not even spend that whole amount, but projected to go over, so that way if we do a budget adjustment now, they are due May 31st. So this is our time to do that for the current fiscal year.
Any questions on that, or looking for a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the fiscal year 25 amended budget document and authorization to file with the Department of Management.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the FY '25 amended budget documents and authorization to file with Department of Management. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Consider approval of voted physical plant and then equipment levy renewal rate.
So FY '26, our voted PEPAL expires, and it's approved by the voters in the last 10 years. So our current one expires at the end of FY '26, so June 30 of 2026, so just over a year from now, and is set at the maximum rate, not the maximum voted PEPAL, but our maximum rate is 67 cents, and then that's down through the income surtax. We need to work this summer on adopting resolutions and following those guidelines to ask the public this fall or winter to approve renewing that. And we need to decide what we want to set it at for the next 10 years. I'll kind of jump to the recommendation and then work my way backwards here. And talking with the Finance Committee on this, and I know where we set it, but I'll try and explain where this is coming from. It is recommended to approve asking this set to be at $1.34, and I'll explain why I sound wishy-washy on that. I had talked to the Finance Committee about $1, and I'll explain why we looked at potentially the max, which is $1.34. I'm okay with either, but I want us to have a discussion on that. I had included on here, I think I had presented one of these at a previous board meetings, just kind of comparing to other Northwest Iowa school districts and where our rate is at, which is at 67 cents. It looks like it was at 10 cents, but that's because we buy that down through the income surtax, and showing some other districts. And I think when we talk that through, other than the Lyon County schools, pretty much everyone in the area had it at $1 or $1.34, other than the schools that didn't have it, which included Harris Lake Park, Okoboji, and Spirit Lake. And I can go back to that in a second. I also included a sheet that's alphabetical that just shows statewide where everyone is with their voted PEPL. I was looking last week, and Jamie and Greg had asked me for this, for which school districts and the percentage of school districts that have this, and I could not find it. And so I didn't get it on there. And what do you know, lo and behold, today, and getting ready for the board meeting, I found the information. So I have it as a printout here. And I apologize, Jenny, that I was not able to get this online because I just found it today. But I'll kind of put up what we're talking about. So the two sides to this, if you look at the side with the words first, it's just explaining what the voter-approved physical plan and equipment levy is. The most it can be set at is $1.34 for up to 10 years when this is passed by voters and so forth. We can set that up. What it says, though, on the bottom, it says the following map shows as of FY25, the start of FY25, so this current school year, this was as of last fall, 278 districts in the state had a voter-approved PEPL, the VPEPL, 278 out of the 325, so that's 85.5% of the state have one. And it says of those 278, 97 use an income surtax to generate some of those funds to lower that rate. That's more just an FYI or for your information. And then it says click for the larger map. If you flip it over, that is the map. And so how that's colored is the districts that don't have a voted PEPL are the ones that are, I'm kind of looking right here, Jenny, I'll put it up here. That's kind of confusing. This is the map I'm referring to here. But the districts that are gray on there are the districts that don't have one. And yeah, in our area it looks like that, but the property tax base plays a big part of that, and you'll see some of the ones to our east in Dickinson County. I'm talking HLP, Spirit Lake, and Okoboji don't, but there's a reason for that because of some other revenue streams in their county, right? And Clay Central, Everly, and then there's a few others, MOC and things like that. But other than that, you can see 278, so 85% of the districts in the state roughly have one. That light blue, I'm going to call it, is the districts that have the voted PEPL but with property tax only. And then the aqua color, I guess I'll call it, whatever you want to say, is the ones that have the income surtax but the rate is lowered through the income surtax. So that's why our district is shaded that way. So it kind of gives you an idea of where we're at statewide with who has the voted PEPL, what percentage of the districts do, just if that's part of the discussion. So why do we need to renew this? Number one, it's required because it's due. And why is Stan DeZale asking for this to go up for sure from 67 cents to $1? Is this just to pay for the new edition? No, it's not. I would be asking for this whether we did the improvements or not, just due to the age of our facilities. Like I talked about with our finance committee, I think there's needs that are going to come up just to keep our facilities in the shape they are due to their age. And I think that's something important to maintain. our facilities, and we want to have nice facilities for our students and be good stewards with the taxes that the public has entrusted us with. The going from a 67 cents to a dollar generates, I'm ballparking it here, but about $125,000 more per year. If you go up to the $1.34, it's a little over $250,000. I apologize, I didn't pull that document up, but I had shared that with Greg and Jamie when we had our meeting that night. So that's kind of the dollars that it would generate for us. So we're talking annually, if we go to that dollar mark, about 125,000 more, and then double that to 250 if we go to the $1.34. What has changed since Jamie and Greg and I have met, and why I am recommending the $1.34 is legislation came out and talking about the property tax reform, and what they're talking about with that is assessing property tax at the full value, not having the rollback anymore. And so if you have a home at $200,000 of value, right now it's not assessed at that full value. They have what's called the rollback, and our rates are based on that. One of the pieces of the reform is to eliminate that rollback and assess all residential, I'm talking, property at the full value, but then you would lower your rates and have to generate the same income, right? If I'm going to tax on a house that's at $150,000 and then a year later it's actually at $300,000, you don't need the rate to be the same to generate the same income, right? But one of the pieces of that in the proposals was to increase the homestead exemption to $50,000, and so there was talk that just splitting the rates in half, which is one of the proposals of this, including the voted PEPAL, wouldn't generate the same amount of dollars for school districts. And so that has since not passed, but what is that going to do? And we can't predict the future. I don't know what next legislative session will happen, but I think that'll be a hot topic of a discussion, is that property tax reform in some manner or shape. I don't think that's going to just go away because the session ended. I think that will be talked about from the start this time rather than from the end, if that makes sense. And so that's kind of where the shift in that is. Do we want to bring that up to $1.34 so if that legislation happens and that goes in half, we can still generate the dollars that we are looking for, if that makes sense? Am I strong on either a buck or a $1.30? I think we need to raise it. Do I have a super strong opinion about either one? I'm open to either one and look forward to your feedback, because ultimately, yeah, we'll have to answer to people for this as well. But that's what we're looking at doing tonight, is to make that recommendation. And then in June, we would make the resolution based off the recommendation tonight. We'll write up the resolution to match what we talk about tonight, and then we'd approve that in June and follow that process. But what we're looking at doing tonight for this agenda item is, what do we want to set that resolution at? A buck or a $1.34 would be my recommendation. So that was a lot of explanation. I hope that made sense. Please feel free to start discussion or ask me some questions.
So once it's set, let's say at $1, it's set that way for 10 years until...
Yes, that'd be the max. Whatever we set it at is the max. And that's why I said ours is currently set at 67 cents max, because that's the max we can ask for. You could say, hey, we didn't have much in repairs this year. We didn't spend much. We could for a year lower it, right? There's nothing that stops that. But that's why it says that's the most you can ask for as a max. So if we set that at $1, which I think what you're getting at is, then over the next 10 years, that's the most. And to start, we would raise it there because that's what we're looking to do, I think. But that's the most we could ask for from the voted side of things. Remember, there's a board approved side of things too that we approve annually every year at 33 cents. And so why the $1.67 an odd amount? When you approve the board approved side, the legislation said you can have $2 total for PEPAL, physical plant and equipment levy. 33 cents comes from the board approved that we do annually, and I don't remember which month off the top of my head, but usually in the fall, and then $1.60 up to $1.67 goes to the voters.
Have we ever decreased it, like if we haven't used it, do you know?
I can't say historically. I didn't go back in every year since it's been established.
Have we ever won?
Decreased it and not asked.
Like if we haven't needed it, we just say, hey, we didn't have much this year. No.
Not that I'm aware of. And
I
it,
didn't even know that was a thing until you brought that up.
yeah, things that are bought with it,
We've only had it for 10 years.
yeah, right.
Oh, it's only been in,
The
Yep.
2000.
I think
10 years ago was the
looked that
first
up
time we
at
had it,
that
yeah.
time, yeah.
Okay.
We didn't have it before that. And it does more than the physical, I mean, we think of upgrades to the buildings or maintenance in the buildings, but there's other things that legally, legislatively qualify.
Vehicles.
Yeah, vehicle purchases, when we didn't have time to get it on here, but our Chromebook quote, we're finishing that up, so we might, that's a separate item, but we might have that as a special board meeting to approve that coming up here in the next week. But when we get our Chromebooks, whether that's for the elementary, middle school, high school each year, we pay for that out of PEPAL. And those costs, I don't think are necessarily going down, right? I'm just trying to think of things that aren't necessarily building-wise that we pay for out of that. There's certain infrastructure
Software.
and software, like technology infrastructure that we pay for out of it. Software, servers, that type of equipment, right?
Scrubber,
Yeah, maintenance
scrubbers,
equipment.
That kind of stuff.
So,
Can't be used for salaries or anything like that. And supply type of stuff, that's just general fund.
yep. So yeah, raising this, that's what those funds have to be used for. We couldn't say, hey, we raised this and now it goes to teaching salaries, or, Stan just did this to increase these salaries. No, that's not what it's used for. And that's not, that's what the general fund is for. This is specifically set aside to pay for those other things so that you reduce the pressure on your general fund.
And with the local option, it reduces it anyway, right? So,
Yeah, and yeah, the local option sales tax, the save dollars kind of goes into in a way goes into that same pot and can cover some of those similar things, yes. So one of the proposals, what I was getting at that was out there, was to basically have this. So they were gonna max out the voted PEPAL at $1. The board half, when we approve, if that would have gone through, the most we could have approved it was 16.5 cents, because now it's 33. The most you could do, the voted portion was $1. And, yeah, they came to $1. That's not, was it $1? Or the total? No, I'm sorry. The most you could do for the voted part was 67 cents. The total was $1. Like, my math isn't working out there. Because it's $1.34 now for voted. It would have been half at 67 cents. And so I'm just making easy math. If you were at $1, they would have rolled that back and made your rate 50 cents. Okay? And because they're saying the assessments would go up roughly twice. One of the concerns, neither for or against the bill, was the rollback in some of the bigger exemption is, as a school district, you might not get the same amount of dollars at 50 cents as you did as $1.
sure.
And so that's where the discussion of, if we want it to get truly at $1 and that reform happens in the future, are we better to be at $1.34 and get that when that gets, if that would happen in the future, roll back? That's one of the discussions that we've had, and other districts have as well. It's just we're in a year where we're voting to renew it. Not every district's in that situation. Some might have renewed it in the last 5 years, some might be up 3 years from now. We're just one of the districts that this is the year where we're up to renew it.
Yeah. But I did hear 2 state legislators say that one topic that they wish they would have been passed on was the real estate taxes.
That they would have got it to
Done
go
something.
through. Yeah,
Yeah, what, I mean, they didn't say what, but they would have done something to it, so.
yep.
And they're looking at reduction, but.
And that's kind of the feedback I got too. I think one of the reasons it didn't, it seemed to appear later in the session, was it talked about right away and came up, and I think that's one of the reasons why it didn't, because everyone's kind of like, let's take some time to study this, not just for schools, because this property tax, the overhaul affects cities, counties, everyone statewide, and so just taking some time to understand some of the proposed legislation and look in at how that actually affects the different entities. So I'm glad they took the time to do that. It might be a good thing. I'm not saying it is or isn't, but just take the time to understand that rather than push it through and then see unintended consequences. Any other questions I can answer for you guys?
No questions, probably looking for a motion?
And
What's that?
And a rate.
Yeah,
Yep.
and in the motion would be the rate, yes.
Yep.
So I guess what are we thinking, $1 or $1.34 or?
So I put both on there. I'll give my
Yeah.
2 cents now if that's what you're asking
Yeah.
for. Well, my 100 cents or 134 cents or whatever
Looks
you
like
want to call it.
34 cents.
Right? Yeah. I think I told you guys in when we met in the finance meeting to talk about this and present it tonight, it said at $1. I think I've changed a little bit. I lean more towards the $1.34. Does that mean we have to ask for that all right away? No. I mean, we could, and it might be useful, but with the uncertainty of what the future holds, and I don't want to put it at $1. Things change legislatively, and now we're not getting what we had originally hoped for to cover that. And I know there'll be more entities in that same boat. And so I would say that's the biggest thing that's probably changed my mind, is just those discussions and looking at those implications for us as a district moving forward. That since we last talked, that I would lean towards $1.34. That would be my recommendation. If we come back and say, no, we want $1, I'm good with that as well. That won't upset me.
I just think you don't know what's gonna happen in the next 10 years from the state on what they're gonna do there. And so you could always, in my mind, you can always change it back to, say you're not gonna take it all, but you can't say you want more.
That's kind of where I'm coming from. That exactly. And that means right away, start at $1 and then we could find out something changed and we have the authority to raise that. But, we could make that an initiative right away that we're looking at going at $1. But we can always cut it back, right? But we can't jump it ahead if it's not approved.
I was gonna say, can we make the motion that we go with the $1.34, but focus on staying at the $1 if we can attain that? Or,
No, I hear what you're saying. I would say we could make the motion, let's stick with the $1.30, if that's what we're saying, the
I didn't know if that's a good
$1.34.
idea to,
And then you can give me that as what's that?
It'll have to be clear on the ballot.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it'll have to say $1.34 and people
Yeah.
are gonna have to understand on the ballot that it'll say that. What I don't know that we put that in the motion, but we can give that to me as an imperative.
Right.
That's what
I
we
think,
work on
you
budget
talked
wise.
about some literature that kind of comes with this to educate, and I know you had shared some with us.
Yes.
from 2015.
And the reason I'm not putting that tonight is we're just doing that to make the recommendation to put it on the resolution as we present that, and then officially approve that next month and move that forward. And on the next agenda item, we'll talk about the date that we vote on that. We'll start putting that in the newspaper out there and have some time for community to ask questions if they do. And we'll publish that in the paper. But yeah, it'd probably be best for the recommendation to stick with that whatever dollar amount.
Yeah.
Yep, I
But we
think
could, when we get to the, I'm jumping ahead here, but we set it at $1.34. When we get to the budget or future later, say, Stan, we're hoping you can keep it at $1 right now. There's nothing wrong with doing that.
How does this fund sit like today as far as?
Well, that's a good question. We're a little low, but we're also at a very unique time because we've been funding some things for the construction project, facilities project ahead of time that we could pay for. That will come from the bond sale, which isn't occurring till June 3. Do you know what I mean? Like in the end, we'll be okay, but and budgeted through. But we knew we weren't going to have many other projects to do this year just because there's going to be some increased costs with going through in the bond sale and some of the other regular maintenance that's happening with that. You know, we're still get a few elementary rooms that we're going to replace the front carpet on. We still need to do those type of things this summer, but I mean, we were confident when this comes through that, and there could be a few overruns on the project that will come out of. So, but right now we're sitting okay with it. I don't have an exact dollar amount. We didn't
Say
look
at
it
the
up.
end of April, we had 335,000. And, or sorry, Peppel, we had 335,000, 304,000 out of save.
All good questions.
Yeah, not an easy decision. I get that,
Yeah, I know.
especially when I come and give you a waffled recommendation. But
I mean, I get both sides of that. I think we'd probably be all right probably with either. I think it's just maybe gives you more flexibility.
the one gives us more
$1.34.
flexibility. But like I said, I'd be good with either.
Right.
The one gives us more flexibility, I think, moving forward.
That's one thing I would say, that the $1.34 gives you unforeseen stuff, whatever that happens to the legislature, if they change something there that really, I'm not saying they will, but, and if we look at a lot of the, in my mind, a lot of the areas around here besides Lakes and Lions don't do the higher rate.
Yeah,
They do.
and even looking through the state, I think the majority of them are at the $1.34. But
I was saying one of these might not have had it. Yeah, but if you do the average rate across the state, it's over $1
yeah,
for those that have it. It doesn't come out to the even dollar amount because, you know, usually most schools are at 67 cents or $1 or $1.34. It doesn't come out of that because of just how averages play out. But if I read the other day, I think the average across the state was $1.05 or something like that, which tells me most are at the $1 or $1.34. But you get some that are at 67 cents, like we are, into that would keep it from being at the max.
well, anything else or?
I don't have anything else to add unless you have questions. Otherwise, I think
Nope,
granted
I was
the point of
saying.
a
No other
If anyone
questions,
has a
then we could look for a motion on one of
motion.
them.
I'll make a motion to consider approval of voted property or physical plant rate to be set at $1.34 for the next 10 years.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the renewal rate for the voted plant and physical plant at $1.34 for the next 10 years. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you for that. I appreciate the discussion there. And so with that, we have to choose when we're going to set the date to vote on renewing that. Ours expires at the end of FY26. We would work on adopting that, but my recommendation is, there's different dates throughout the year, but my recommendation is to bring this to the public to vote on September 9. The next date after that is the general election in November, and then the date after that is a date in March. If it wouldn't pass, we have to wait a certain number of days before we could bring that back to the public again. I'm not saying it won't, but just if that was a question. So doing that in September gives us a little flexibility with that. It's also the recommendation from both IASB and talking with some of their representatives and ISFIS, which is the, I always got to think there's Iowa School Financial Information Services that we subscribe to and get a lot of content from. They definitely recommend doing it on a non-general election date. They just said it's usually been found to be more successful for schools for that reason. So that's my recommendation, is to vote for this or bring it to the public to vote on September 9, 2025.
Any questions pertaining to that? Voting date?
I'll make a motion to approve the setting of the date of the voted Pebble renewal for September 9, 2025.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the date for the vote of the voted Pebble to September 9th, 2025. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Consider approval of 25-26 Vista Iowa contract.
It's formerly Grant Wood. It's now called Vista Iowa, and it's our accounting and payroll software. And the quote is attached.
Everybody still loves it?
Kendra's saying yes and don't go another
I
direction.
don't know about love, but
Yeah.
we don't want any changes. Yeah. They're very good to work with and very helpful.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2025-26 Vista Iowa contract.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the 2025-2026 Vista Iowa contract. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Consider approval of NCC partnership agreements.
So there's two parts to this for the two motions here. The first one is for the jointly enrolled courses, or basically the courses that we take online through NCC for college credit. So Dawson takes a college, I'm trying to think of an example, takes college, I can't even think of an example now, takes world history for college credit, right? We have to have a contract with NCC, and they would be our provider for this to get dual credits, an elective at Sibley Cheatham, and then they get college credit for that as well.
I'll make a motion to approve the jointly enrolled courses agreement with NCC as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the jointly enrolled courses agreement with NCC. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes. And now alternative high school.
This would be, we'd pay for, if needed, for seats at the alternative school if we'd have students that so enrolled there. Our first priority would be do that in town here at the library.
I was thinking we did that.
Yep, we did, but if we needed, or that's not working out and we need seats, we need to approve the agreement with them annually. So we did not have anyone the second half of the year that attended there.
How was our joint courses? Is that higher, you think, or does it stay pretty steady, or have you seen?
I did not see I haven't seen yet the final,
They haven't sent the final bill.
yeah, the final bill yet for that to look at. We might have our overall number down due to changes in enrollment, but I would say utilization just seemed to be up, if that makes sense. Compared to a few years ago, it might be down for the number of courses, but I think it seemed like there were a good number of students taking advantage of that for multiple courses. And just because some of the ones that even we had in-house before that weren't dual credit were offered dual credit this year, so like they could get dual credit for CAPS through NCC as well with Katie, if I remember right, and one of our math courses too. We used to do with pre-calc, but it changed, and I think the college algebra course, so, you know, that's an increase in usage as well through that.
Okay, any other questions on the alternative high school or the others? Looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the agreement with NCC for alternative high school services.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the agreement with NCC for the alternative high school. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Consider approval of payments to Site Logic.
Yeah, same that we've had the last several months. The invoices are attached.
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the payments to Site Logic as listed. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Consider approval of pay application for L&L Builders.
So Site Logic is our general, the one that won the bid that will work under Site Logic is L&L Builders, and pay application, but basically their first invoice.
Questions on that, or 50,604.17?
I'll make a motion to pay the request number 1 from LNLB Builders for the 2025 construction project and a request of $50,604.17.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the payment request of $50,604.17 to L&L Builders. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Consider approval of additional 2024-25 district depository.
So this would be for this current year, asking for ISJIT, looking at potentially putting in the short term, we could put, that's why it's a max of 7 million, but we could put some of the proceeds from the bond sale in there. We're looking at potentially putting, do you remember from the bond sale, we have to keep, I'm gonna use the term kitty, that 650,000 roughly, that's not the exact amount, but roughly that we have to keep set aside to guarantee the payment for the life of the bond repayments till the end, and then we can use that. So we're looking at potentially, and they recommend having a separate account for that, so we would use this as well with a higher rate of return and using ISJIT to house that amount. But we need to approve them as a depository in order to do so.
I'll make a motion to approve ISJIT as a depository with a maximum amount of 7 million for the revenue brought proceeds that we receive in June.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve Iowa Schools Joint Investment Trust as a depository for the 24-25 year. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
So these were presented last month. No changes. The changes were presented last month. I won't go through them as well. And since this is the second month, the policy reads there, but you could make the motion to approve the second reading of the policies as listed. Unless you desire to read them all off, but we did read them off last month.
I'll make a motion to approve the second reading of the following policies as listed.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the second reading of the board policies that are listed. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next meetings are listed there,
Remember, next week,
and then we've got the, yep.
Tuesday would be the works, I get to say the right date, right? The 27th is the Tuesday, the work session with Luann at 5:30. We'll do it in the boardroom since it's, won't be admin team, it'll be the board, me, Kendra, and Luann, so we'll meet in the boardroom.
Okay, and then talking points.
I had Wednesday the 28th.
Did I put the wrong date down?
I don't know, so I got it on my calendar.
I think Luann's figuring on the 27th because she did email me today. That was the second, it was the 27th or the 28th,
I've got the 27th.
so I went with the 27th, I think. You're not that far off. Yeah, that was the two initial main dates. I think we ended up going with the 27th because that was the first one that worked. I think there's one conflict each night, but we went with the 27th. Yeah, talking points.
You bet.
There's a lot of them.
We almost made it through the whole alphabet there on the agenda item.
It's come up in conversation.
Not that no one noticed.
We didn't make it to AA, so that's good.
Yeah.
Good job for the music department, local and otherwise.
Yes. And I know there's a lot to approve tonight, but I think that also speaks to a lot that's going on in our district and some exciting things that are happening and in approving all the bond things. That's fun, but that also indicates that there are positive things going on and making decisions with Pepple. Not that that's exciting, but it indicates there are exciting things going on for the future
Yep.
of our district. So
Positive and needed. Well,
yes.
definitely.
Yep.
So. Nothing else, unless you guys want to stick around for a while? Yep. I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We moved and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Cool. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.